Good morning, everyone. Our lamb judge today is Brandon Callis, and he is from Minko, Oklahoma, and he is a teacher at the Redlands Community College. So if we can get him a huge round of applause and a thanks for coming out here today to Eddy County. Please start bringing your Class 1 breeding sheep to the show ring. Class 1 breeding sheep to the show ring.
Yes, first of all, good morning. Definitely a blessing and honor to get to come out here and meet you guys today and go through the sheep and goats that are trying. A good way to start us off these breeding ewes and breeding sheep here. I know we've got some different breed types and combinations of things, but I do like the way this one that leads off is built and designed. A very muscular ewe that's got enough product and width, but probably where you like her as good as anything is that kind of balance, that kind of eye appeal, and that kind of structural correctness, I think is why she wins this class more so than anything. Long-wooled, one that comes out here next and second. I do like that one from her hip forward. She's really, really bold in terms of just the shape of her body. Handles really good up top. I like where her chest sets and her front end comes together pretty well. We could change the way she handles her rear leg posture. She wants to tuck underneath herself just a little bit and redesign her hind leg. She makes that pair closer, but still a nice one there. Then we got a pair of them here you can go back and forth on, and maybe I give up a little bit in terms of just size, but boy, I love this one's body shape. I like her width from behind. I like her balance. She's got some levelness and some correctness to her. She does give up a little bit of more volume to the one here in fourth in terms of depth of body and smoothness, and both these two are very, very sound, very practical animals. Just wish that one had a touch more shape of muscle right there behind her shoulder, and we get right in behind her. But really, four nice shoes there in that class. Got a nice single entry U that could definitely use more competition. Love this one's volume. Just again at that size and that age and that maturity, she still keeps herself together in terms of balance. There's just not a whole lot of waist to her. Compositionally, she's still okay, but her length to side, her length to hip, her structural correctness makes a nice U to represent this class.
Please bring your first and second place breeding sheep back to the show ring. All your first and second place breeding sheep back to the show ring.
Got a nice set of views here, and again, some different types, some different, to me, in terms of just utility of these sheep, different ways we're going to probably use those and breed those. But again, three of them that are pretty nice, and then these two class winners, I think, do a lot of things correctly. Again, both of them very good structured. Both of them you like to move. Probably their best vantage point is on the move in terms of just the way their spines work, the way they handle their feet and legs. Obviously, there's a little more muscle, maybe uniqueness in this one up front. There's a little more length and performance and just natural growth than the one that came out of that single entry class. So just kind of got to pick your poison there, but one hits me a little harder is the one out of class 1. So she'll be our champion here. Going to use the big sheep there out of the single entry class to be reserved.
Your champion breeding sheep went to Clancy Conklin, and your reserve went to Lynn Wright. Please start bringing your up to 4-year-old boosters to the show ring.
Pee Wee is always fun. I'm just glad I don't have to place them. Makes my heart feel a little better. But really, a good set of them out here. Obviously, morning people. That's good. And not a lot of them have a whole lot of fear. I like that as well. So let's give all these youngsters right here a big, big round of applause. Done a nice job out here.
Please bring your fine wool crosses to the north end of the show ring. Your fine wool crosses to the north end of the show ring.
here in this division here. Obviously, there's several of them doing a very, very nice job here. Again, some differences in maybe experience level or getting there, assistance, not assistance. That don't bug me. I'm looking for somebody who's got just enough intensity and drive to look competitive, but yet still getting a job done. The sheep kind of looking like they need to look, and so they're doing a good enough job. You got to be a little picky to pick one out here and really decipher between them. So again, a very, very nice setup. Let's put our hands together for this group. I'll pick the one I think's doing the best job out here today.
Please bring your doorburs to the south end of the show ring. Your doorburs to the south end of the show ring.
Got an interesting class here, and again, I like to really combine things on all three of these top sheep and really get the one we're trying to make and trying to get after. But you combine structure and skeletal correctness and quality, and then I'm a big composition guy. I'm one that I want some on them to make them look like a market lamb, but at the same time, I think they need to handle with some leanness and trimness to them, and that's when this one starts to elevate here amongst this class. A big hip one, good over his rack and his back. Again, structurally and skeletally, I like him better than the one here in second. I just wish he grabbed a little flatter, square, and wider right there over his loin to really suit me, but still a good kind of a sheep. It's carcass to me. Stands there. There's not one in this entire class that handles like that one. He is so consistent there over his rack and out through his loin. He's the biggest and most dynamic in his loin. He's huge in his hip and got there. He wants to drop his old chest floor, maybe not look quite as neat and good there on the move as he does there standing. And that's what makes it close with him and this one in third. One in third is probably the one you do love in terms of just his sheer structure. It doesn't hurt, you know, he's got some big legs there to go off of, and so he's easy to look at. His body length is good. Initially, there's a good look of quality to him. The more you study that sheep, he just needs more to him for me. You get him behind him, he's a shot narrower in his pen. You get your hands on him, he doesn't handle quite as firm and expressive as what I'd like to see him. So he's just a little soft for me, needs just a little more width and substance for me, but I do love his structure. I like his bone and like his look. Same thing can be said for this one here in fourth. He probably handles a little better over his rack than the one that leads out ahead of him. He's just a little more bunched up. I like to stretch him out and lift him up front. I like to give him just a little more base width as he leaves you there as well. And he's starting to handle just a little soft there over his rib cage as well. Another one, hard one for me, I just wish there was more of him, is the one that comes next. I think his trimness is good. His look of quality is good. We've got him presented nicely. Just not quite enough of him when you get off either end of him. A muscular one that comes next, just a little off in his balance. He gets up in his spine, a little short hip, a little round shouldered. And then the one that's going to close our class, again, smooth-made sheep, just one that gets a little deep and plainer in his look, and more so he just gets overpowered in terms of muscle within this class. But a good class of final crosses.
First place went to Creed Hughes, Country Clovers. Second went to McKenna Cox, tag 373. Third went to Clansley Conklin, Cottonwood 4-H. Fourth went to Swayze Fulmar, Cottonwood 4-H. Fifth went to McKenna Cox, Brush Poppers 4-H, tag 370. Sixth went to Colton Ecase, Cottonwood 4-H. And seventh went to Colton Sandman, Cottonwood 4-H. Please bring your Class 1 speckle faces to the north end of the show ring. Class 1 speckle faces to the north end of the show ring. We need Class 1 speckle faces to the north end of the show ring. Class 1 speckle faces to the north end of the show ring.
Really a nice set of hair sheep here, and these three here on the top end I like quite a bit. All three of these are very, very good carcass sheep, as you'd expect when you start to get into this breed of them. Again, just the robustness of them is good. The power and shape of them are good. So you start to get down to maybe some of those little pieces of balance and structure. And as you walk these around, that white one just really, really catches your eye. He is so much different and so much better from his midrib back in terms of the levelness and correctness out through his hip and his hind leg posture. He still keeps it wide, but yet he's square. Still keeps everything very, very correct. He's one of those, you know, I don't say this often, but if you had a set of sisters to that one running around and just in production, you'd love them just as well. That's a good productive sheep, but yet there's still some skeletal quality. There's some show lamb pieces of that one you can really get into. What makes it tough, what makes it just maybe a little more challenging, he's right on that line in terms of condition where I want him. I wouldn't want him any fatter than what he is. He starts to push that just a little, and that's where I probably like these next two just a shade better. They touch a little firmer, they touch a little crisper in terms of the way they handle over their tops and out through their hip there even as well. Just maybe not the same kind of rear leg quality and structure when we get these two on the move in terms of just the smoothness and the way that one operates there up front, but a nice pair of them. One we're going to run here in third. You can see it. You don't have to touch him. That's a muscular creature right there. That one's got muscle everywhere. He's got a huge, huge back and rack in him. He's got a huge hip in him as well. You know, you start again, put little fine pieces together. He gets up in his back, a little short out of his hip, a little coarse and more open up front, and just doesn't balance up as nicely as what those two do. But that's still a very, very useful, very powerful type of sheep. Got another pair of them here that both, again, muscles not a problem with them, width still pretty good. I like to lean both of them up just a shade, maybe stretch them out relative to those two or three in front of them, but good kind of a sheep. Got a pair of ewes here that come next. I just need a little more to them relative to the weathers that beat them. I like the way this one touches. I like her leanness. I like her composition probably even just a shade better. Just decided she needs more muscle. Same thing with the speckle-hided one here. Just needs more shape and more width. Then the little guy just got outpowered in this class. I like his hip shape. I think there's some expression of muscles, particularly out through his leg. Just needs more width and more bulk and more pounds to run with those ones ahead of him. But really nice class there, Dorpers.
First place went to Madison Mancha, Cottonwood 4-H. Second went to Clansley Conkling, Cottonwood 4-H. Third went to Aspen Hughes, Country Clovers. Fourth went to Chloe Jefferson, Blue Jeans and Boots. Fifth went to Michaela Jefferson, Blue Jeans and Boots. Sixth went to Peyton Norman, Loving 4-H. Seventh went to Kobe Norman, Loving 4-H. And eighth went to Aspen Cass, Brush Poppers 4-H. Please bring your Class 2 speckle faces to the north end of the show ring. Your Class 2 speckle faces to the north end of the show ring.
Another nice class here, and maybe again I fight the system a little just because I like to keep them as productive and representative of market animals as possible, and that's where I start to question just a few immaturity issues here with this one that wins. But the longer you look at him, he's just too good in terms of just his quality, his outline, the way he puts things together. A little more unique features about him, and that's past his color. I think one that just runs uphill the right way. I love the way he handles and dimension over his rack. He's really, really good there, the upper dock and hip and pin. I like to make him a little bigger in his a little bigger, flatter square there. I like to square him up in his hock just to shade and see a little more lower dimension in terms of his twist and lower leg. That's being picky from a power guy. That one's outline and skeleton and neatness. That's kind of what's going to sell him here in this class. One here we run here in second. He is the more productive one of the pair. The one that, again, I love the way he handles. He's very consistent in his handle. I like the shape he has there as well. The longer you study him, though, he gets just a little plainer there in the base of his shoulder and chest floor, a little smaller there at the ground. Eat the leg wool, he's just a little frailer footed and doesn't handle himself quite as as loose and comfortable as what that one does, but still a very nice sheep. One we have here in third and fourth, both of them are just a little short bodied. Like, I love this one's hip dimension. I like his shape. I want to strengthen him up in terms of his pasturing, lift him up in his hip, maybe make him a little better in the way his shoulder ties in up front. Same thing can be said for this one. Again, just needs to be a little bigger statured, a little longer. For his size, though, there's some balance, there's some shape, there's some muscle there. Just wanted to see a little more. The ewe that comes here next, another one that's very smooth made, and when he can get her propped up at times, that one can come together. She's just a little softer handling, maybe not the same kind of expression and shape than the wether that closes our class, just a little more behind probably in terms of flesh. I like to see him quite a bit further along in terms of that finish to make him more competitive here amongst this group. But good class, nice pair there up top.
Your first place went to Madeline Clark, Carlsbad FFA. Second went to Clay Kincaid, Penasco 4-H. Third went to Ryland Hughes, Country Clovers. Fourth went to Jaylee England, Cottonwood 4-H. Fifth went to Colton Sandman, Cottonwood 4-H. And sixth went to Ashlyn Hayes, Loving 4-H. Please bring your first and second place speckle faces to the north end of the show ring. Your first and second place speckles to the north end of the show ring.
Nice class. Comes together just a little more logically maybe than some we've had, but this one does a pretty good job of doing what I've been talking about, of taking some really good market lamb pieces in terms of just muscle shape and freshness. But you watch this guy on the move. He's flexible, he's loose, he's athletic, he can get and go. You know, there'll be some that are more tucked up maybe right there in the base of their chest and their shoulder, but I think the way he's designed there kind of matches him and keeps him proportional. Way he's designed up front, he's good out of his hip. He touches the next best in this class there as well. He's not near maybe the powerhouse that leads out in front of him, but still a good kind of a sheep. Get a trio of sheep here you'd like to maybe modify just a shade in terms of balance and look and presence here. But this one, you just get down to the carcass fundamentals, touches probably the leanest of those three, and still probably has the more product of those three when you get your hands right on top of them and from behind. A bigger ewe here that's got some stretch and some length, some heaviness, some structure to her. I just like to accommodate her with a little more shape of muscle to go along with that. Then the opposite for this little ewe here, she's wide and opened up and pretty square. I just like to lift her up and make her a little neater, maybe lean her up just a touch. She's probably pushing the most condition out here that's detrimental in terms of just a cutability standpoint. But again, very, very good class of sheep. Nice one there up top.
First place went to Kyla Hughes, Country Clovers. Second went to Aiden Cox, Brush Properties 4-H. Third went to Colton Sandman, Cottonwood 4-H. Fourth to Ashlyn Hayes, Loving 4-H. And fifth went to Dakota Goldston, Cottonwood 4-H. Please bring your Class 1 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Your Class 1 black faces to the north end of the show ring.
Good set of specs here. Really, again, nice quality here on the top end. These two are very, very nice sheep. I guess the thing that's presented here, both these are good, and we could use either one of them and justify it. But if I'm being honest with myself, it's just that conversation of a show sheep that's got unique show sheep pieces that may not be a market lamb yet versus a market lamb that's still got enough show sheep look and presence to him. And I love his structure and the way he handles himself as well. So I'm going to use that heavyweight to be the champ. I'm going to use a little lightweight here out of Class 1 to be reserved. But good set of sheep.
Your champion speckle face went to Kyla Hughes, and your reserve speckle face went to Madeline Clark. Please bring your Class 2 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Your Class 2 black faces to the north end of the show ring.
Man, good class here. Really got a deep, deep class. And, you know, initially when they come in, I'm a simple-minded person. So when they come in, I'm just telling myself good and bad. And I had a lot of good ones as I came in. And so you got to break them down and study them. I walked them a little while because I don't mind seeing them just how they naturally get and flow uninterrupted by somebody bracing them and just how everything works together. The longer you study him, the more this one at the head of the class just slowly starts to separate himself. Just shape and product is there, much like the one right in behind him. Definitely has that advantage as well. So good out of his hip and his lower leg and the way he's designed there. His progression of width, when you get on top of this guy, where he lays into his shoulder, but where he continues to get back wider from there on back, still one that touches with the right kind of hardness and leanness to him. But again, when we get these on the go, he's so up fronted, he almost wants to prance and go, but yet he still keeps his top line and hip organized. Nice sheep here leads off this class. One we're going to leave here in second, I think from his shoulder back, he's a man. I mean, that one is opened up. He has got a ditch running down his back. He's huge in his hip. He's heavy bone. He's big, wide, and square, like I like to build him as well. You can just pick on him there up front. She does a good job showing it out of and hiding it a little bit, but he's just a little more opened up front, a little more opened up in his lower shoulder, not as elevated in the top side of his shoulder as what that one that leads off does. But that's a really neat pair to get and study here within this lightweight class. Another one you really love on the move is this one here in third. Boy, he is heads up, runs uphill. He's got a big wide hip in him. He probably is so big hipped at times maybe he doesn't tie in as smooth from his loin into his hip, much like those two in front of him do. And at times of those three, he gets just a little flatter in his body shape. As you study him, they're a little bolder around their body, the ones that lead out ahead of him, but that's still an awfully nice sheep. This one doesn't want to cooperate, but I still think you can see the good. His smoothness is good. His balance is good. I think his feet and legs are still in an appropriate manner. That sheep wants to run downhill just a little bit. Probably of this initial top 4 or 5, he's the one that maybe doesn't have as much shape and expression of muscle, but still a good sheep that's got a lot of good going for him. Big hipped, expressive one here, just a little raw here yet today. A little high in his spine when he walks, just a little flatter body, rawer built than what his contemporaries are. Big monster hip one here that just doesn't fit it all together. She does a good job trying to keep his front end pulled out of him, but he's just a little heavier and lower fronted, a little higher twisted. We got 4 of them. We end up closing our class. We just get outpowered in this class. Don't have the same kind of shape and width and bulk we find in some of these other ones. Maybe want to change the structure on that one that closes our class. But let's give this lightweight class a hand, and really nice class here at Medium Bulls.
First place went to Jaylee England, Cottonwood 4-H. Second place went to Clansley Conklin, Cottonwood 4-H. Third went to Aspen Hughes, Country Clovers. Fourth went to Swayze Fullmark, Cottonwood 4-H. Fifth went to Bryce Bain, Artesia FFA. Sixth went to Madison Mancha, Cottonwood 4-H. Seventh went to Dylan Wright, Cottonwood 4-H, tag 635. Eighth went to Haley Martin, Carlsbad FFA. Ninth went to Jonah Pope, Country Clovers. And 10th went to Dylan Wright, tag 636. Please bring your Class 3 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Your Class 3 black faces to the north end of the show ring.
Got a real interesting class here, and again, I like to just do some different things, just maturity pattern types and things I like to change around and mix up. But you just start trying to evaluate the most good, the most dynamic, puts the most good together. This one at the head of the line probably does that as good as any. There's no doubt about it. That's the power sheep in this class. There's no doubt about it. That one has some proportion and some balance to him. His problem is he's just too little. He's low to the ground. I like to pick him up and stretch him out there as well, but I can't discriminate against him. I've been short my whole life as well. So that's a nice sheep here that's going to lead off this class. One we have here in second, he's wanting to labor on his right hind leg, and that's one thing that maybe detracts from him quite a bit out here. And if you wanted to float him down, I'd justify that with you, but I think once you get past that and you watch him and watch when he's propped up, he might be as good a sheep in here in terms of just levelness, smoothness, linked out through his hip. He's probably just a scotch bigger than the one that leads out ahead of him, but today, just hard for me to figure out where to put that guy with him struggling just a little bit off his right hind leg there, but still a good kind of a sheep. I still thought just his kind and quality deserved to be up there with that other one. Probably the sheep in third is the one I have the hardest time reading, because there's times I think his kind is right. I think his size, his maturity pattern is where I'd rather be than maybe even the two that are in front of him. And he's got some natural muscle to him. It's just, does he have enough out here? I like to get just a little more shape out of that guy, a little more look out of him. At times he can hit you just a little general and plain in a place or two, but a good sheep. This one wins the award for getting the most out of this sheep, because I think he needs more to him. But boy, when she gets that one propped up, she makes you second guess that one every time, because he handles really, really wide up top. He handles really wide over his loin. Finally, when you get in behind him, though, he just needs more hip dimension, a little more shape and width opened up to compare to those. That's still a nice sheep. She does a nice job showing. One that we have here next that comes next this ewe here. She's good and big in her hip. She's fairly athletic in her build. She gets just a little flatter body maybe for me, a little rawer made. I like to open her up on the top side of her skeleton to match what she is there from behind out of her hip. You that comes here next, she's got some width and some boldness to her. I just want to reposition her a little bit. She's probably a little narrower from behind than she is up front, so I like to just change her width advantages off her either end and maybe lean her up just a shade, but it's still a nice ewe here in this class. A big productive wether here that's got some width, a little high in his spine. I like to change him there in his loin, make him a little neater up front. And then a pair of bigger outline sheep that we end up closing with, just for as big as they are, I'd still like to open them up there in terms of base width and give them just a little more loin shape to those sheep as well. But again, really competitive class, good class there up top.
First place went to Addison Fulmar, Artesia FFA. Second went to Reagan Van Soos, Country Clovers. Third went to Dylan Wright, Cottonwood 4-H. Fourth went to Gracie Rand, Artesia FFA. Fifth went to Jaylee England, Cottonwood 4-H. Sixth went to Dylan Goldston, Artesia FFA. Seventh went to Reagan Chavez, Loving 4-H. Eighth went to Kaylee Shockey, Cottonwood 4-H. And ninth went to Ashlyn Hayes, Loving 4-H. We need all of your first and second place black faces from class 1 and 2 to the north end of the show ring. So all your first and second place black faces to the north end of the show ring.
I think another good competitive class of sheep here. And again, I think these two, initially you like them, and the longer we study the rest of their contemporaries out here, the more they kind of get up there. And I'll be honest, I'd like to put parts and pieces of both of these together. But this one's skeleton, this one's build. To me, he's built for the long haul here. Just love this position of his hip and his dog, the way his hind leg works out of him. Really a youthful one in terms of just his front end design and elevation. Comes together very, very good in terms of balance. You know, yet today I'd still probably make him just a little rounder bodied and bolder in the center part of his rib cage there. But then you ask yourself, as you continue to feed these on down the road, does he get to come on and put that on? But boy, I love his skeleton and his quality. But that's where I do favor this one here in second. A little more my kind, a little more right down the middle in terms of just shape and boldness right there in the center part of that one's body. Monster hip in this one. Still one that travels pretty good in terms of hind leg. It's just front 1/3 or front half relative to your class winner, just not as unique, not as high quality there. A little more depth to his chest, a little more base wide up front than he is from behind relative to that one. So really a nice pair, though, to end up here within this class. What we have here in third, you know, again, not the perfect sheep, but carcass-wise, there's a lot to like about this one. She gets this one propped up. He's probably handles as big backed and massive as any. She really allows him to come together and have a look of balance to him. You know, you watch that sheep, you like to open him up in his base width and just give him more chest and forearm there, but still a good kind of a sheep. The ewe that comes here next, I like this one over a rack. I like her over her loin. She still has some balance and some levelness to her. You get right in behind her, though, maybe not as much punch and shape and skeletal width there. A wether here initially I really, really like. Again, just he's up-fronted. He's got some rack dimension. He's got a big hip in him. I just want to change his loin, just from a width standpoint. Then off on balance, he really wants to dish that thing and take away from him a little bit, but that's still a nice kind of a sheep. Stout, productive wether here that just needs to be a little neater to look at. He's a little rounder shoulder, a little higher spine, just a little rounder out of his hip and rear leg. A raw or made sheep here just needs more time and needs more flesh to move him up a little higher. A stout wether here, I like to, again, see just a little better in his look and more opened up front. And we close with a really, really long-bodied, really level ewe there. It just maybe doesn't have the same kind of shape and expression of muscle, like to make her a little stouter legged like the ones in front of her. But a good class, nice pair here up top.
First place went to Madeline Clark, Carlsbad FFA, tag 707. Second place went to Madeline Clark, tag 705. Third place went to Kinley McCullough, Loving 4-H. Fourth went to Dakota Goldston, Cottonwood 4-H. Fifth went to Braden Hughes, Country Clovers. Sixth went to Haley Martin, Carlsbad FFA. Seventh went to Reagan Chavez, Loving 4-H. Eighth went to Colton Sandman, Cottonwood 4-H. And ninth went to Trevor Pope, Country Clovers. Please bring all your Class 4 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Class 4 black faces to the north end of the show ring.
A lot of quality here within this division. And again, I think our bar is set pretty high for the rest of the day here. I just really like what we bring out here on our front line. Some sheep that really have some quality and really neat to look at and study. Just again, some differences maybe in rib design, some differences in the way they combine things. I thought that first class was an awfully nice class, a very deep class. And again, they set this bar very high. I think we're going to keep it that way as well. So that first and that second out of the first class will be Grand Reserve in this division.
Your Division I champion blackface went to Jaylee England, and your reserve Division I blackface went to Addison Fulmar. I'm so sorry. Your Division I champion went to Clancy But I got Jaylee right? Oh, what the hell? I'm sorry. No, you're good. Good job. Sorry. Okay, one more time. Your Division I champion went to Jaylee England, and your reserve division went to Clancy Conklin. Please bring all your Class 5 black faces to the north end of the show ring. All your Class 5 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Please bring your Class 5 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Your Class 5 black faces to the north end of the show ring.
Man, another really good class. And I think the hard thing about this class is maybe there's not one that doesn't have just a big glaring hole. And so you got to decide what side of the fence you're going to be on with a couple of areas. And so if you wanted to rearrange this group, you wouldn't get a big argument from me. But again, I start with these things and trying to make them as good market animals as possible. To me, that's where these two kind of elevate in terms of just some of the carcass things they put out there. Then we start to evaluate them things for show sheep. And despite this one's shoulder, you get past his shoulder, I don't think there's a question about it. He's the best sheep in here. In terms of just hip dimension and squareness, he's round, truly round-bodied and big in terms of his back. He's proportional in the way things are all put together. Like I said, to get as much power as he has, you do have to live with his shoulder, and that's where I change him. I like to tuck him in and make him just a little different there. But again, I think one with that kind of power, you watch these sheep structurally, he's still one of the better structured ones out here as well. So a good sheep here that leads off this class. One we're going to leave here in second. I would challenge all of you to touch this one and get on top of him, because this is how one's supposed to handle in terms of just freshness and back shape. He is by far the biggest loin thing that's come in the ring today. I love him right there behind his shoulder, but yet he's still smooth, still brings himself together up front. He's almost so big in his loin, his top, he looks a little narrow right there out of his hip and pins, and that's where I change him, give him just a little more shape from the side there through his lower leg, but still a good sheep that's got some squareness, got some quality. Love the way he touches and handles. This one we have here in third, I don't know any other way to describe him, he's just good honest sheep. Heavy bone, big structured. He's probably not fed as aggressively as some of these other ones, but still one, I think the goods there. Truly a round body one, a big hip one. He's a little shorter out of his hip. At times he's a little plainer up front, and you talk about his lower shoulder and the way he comes together there, but that's a sound, productive wether that's got the right kind of size, got the right kind of length to him. I still see a lot of quality in that sheep. What we leave here next and fourth, he's one of those problem ones for me, because if he's bold enough bodied for you, if he's good enough in his loin for you, you can find a higher spot for him pretty quickly. That's a long-sided, shapely one that gives you an awesome look of quality, particularly up front. I just made that call for me. I want to see him more opened up in his body to match the shape he has down his spine, make him a little bolder there and set him a little flatter and squarer in his loin. Another one of those problem sheep is the one that comes next, because if you call him big enough, if you call him muscular enough, his structure is probably the next best behind your class one in terms of just ease of movement, flexibility, the way he's designed at the ground. I finally decided he's just a touch soft for me, he's just a touch small for me, and then with that I want to see more shape and expression to match the condition he's starting to put on, and that's being critical of him, but that's still a nice sheep here within this class. Another nice one to stand down this low is the one that comes next. I love his elevation, and he's got some true shape and touches well. For me though, he gets just again a little base narrow for me. I want to change him right there over his loin and set him a little flatter and square. A big hip, round bodied one here that's very impressive on his top side. He's the one of this crew, as you watch him walk, he's just a little plainer up front, a little lower up front. I like to make him a little neater. She does a good job of getting him pulled out of him and getting him put together. I just want to make him a little different there. Another stout wether here that just gets a little flatter right there, right over his spine relative to his classmates. Like to open him up in his chest width there, alongside that smooth made one here. That same conversation could use more expression. Then a pair of them we close with just don't have the same kind of power shape that we find in these ones ahead of them. Outstanding class there. Nice one there to lead off with.
First place went to Kaylin Klein, Artesia FFA. Second went to Bryce Bain, Artesia FFA. Third went to Maylee Phillips, Country Clovers. Fourth went to Aspen Hughes, Country Clovers. Fifth went to Creed Hughes, Country Clovers. Sixth went to James King, Loving 4-H. Seventh went to Madison Mancha, Cottonwood 4-H. Eighth went to Kinley McCullough, Loving 4-H. Ninth went to Reagan Chavez, Loving 4-H. 10th went to Dylan Wright, Cottonwood 4-H. And 11th went to Michaela Jefferson, Blue Jeans and Boots. Please bring your Class 6 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Your Class 6 north faces to the north end of the show ring.
Got a good set of sheep here, and again, not just the perfect one, but boy, some nice ones here, and probably all the way through this class. This might be our deepest class we've had, just from first to the one that closes our class. So really a good set of them here. One that wins, though, again, is initially when he walks in, you love his structure. That one sets him down the right way. You like his look from the side and his smoothness that he has. And then in my mind, I'm wishing and hoping. It's like, oh, I hope there's enough there. And you get on top of him, and there he is. Really good in terms of just the shape of his body and his rack dimension. I like him out through his hip. I like the shape he has there to his lower leg. If I'm going to be awfully critical, and again, this is a guy that stresses power just a little more maybe than the rest of them do, I'd still shape him up or widen him just a nickel right there over his loin, open him up his chest with just a shade more. But, boy, he is still monster-backed and round-bodied, and he's so good on the move when he gets propped up, and that's kind of what leads him in this class. One we're going to leave here in second. Boy, you talk about, again, a carcass sheep, a sheep that's really, really unique and good on the top side of his skeleton, and his hips awesome. Around his body is very, very good. He's a little tighter in the way he sets and addresses the surface, but in more so, to me, his shoulder, knee, and that whole angle there up front, I like to bring him into those shoulders and provide him with just a little different reach and comfort as he gets and goes. But, boy, from there back, that's a stout sheep that's got some outstanding features and pieces about him. I like the way he handles as well. When we leave here in third, he's just a little staler. It's probably the biggest thing I can get on him about. I like his smoothness. I like his look up front. I like his hip dimension. When I touch his loin, though, you start to pick up his spine just a shade. He's just starting to get a little bit past 12 o'clock there in terms of the way he handles right there over his loin amongst those three. But that's still a high-quality sheep that's got a lot of good to him. A stout wether here that's really big-legged, really dense-middled, but he almost gets a little plainer. He could benefit from being a little more shapely. He's not as athletic looking as what those 3 are lead ahead of him. So because of that, I roll him down just a shade more. But just want to talk about a productive looking bone. That one kind of has got the right kind of pieces there. This darker ewe here, from about her hip forward, she is really, really good. I love just the planer there of her loin and her top. The way she sends that into her neck and upper skeleton is good. Roundness of her body is good. I got to square up in her hock. I got to give her more dimension from behind as she leaves you, but still a good sheep. Really wide made wether here. Wants to curl his hind leg under him a little more than I'd like him to. He's a little plainer up front, maybe not as fresh in his handle. A pair of sheep here. Again, love that one stretch and the length. He's starting to get a little hide that takes away from him. I like to see him a little different in his loin. I love the shape and expression this one we close with. Just not maybe as productive, centered, and opened up in his body shape is what we find in these ones ahead of him. That's an outstanding class. Good from one end to the other there. But again, congratulations those up top.
First place went to Creed Hughes, Country Clovers. Second went to Ty Martinez, Loving 4-H. Third went to Kaylin Klein, Artesia FFA. Fourth went to Jaylee England, Cottonwood 4-H. Fifth went to Bailey Dennison, Cottonwood 4-H. Sixth went to Madeline Clark, Carlsbad FFA. Seventh went to Stella Rand, Cottonwood 4-H. And eighth went to Colton Nikes, Cottonwood 4-H. Please bring your first and second black faces from class 4 and 5 to the north end of the show ring. Your first and second place black faces from class 4 and 5.
Got another nice class of sheep here, and again, there's some depth all the way through, and some things you got to decide. But again, for me, the one that leads off our class, just a good animal. I think one that puts a lot of good market fundamentals together, but yet there's still a show sheep underneath all that muscle and all that bulk there as well. And I think the longer he's out here, the more he kind of grows on you. I like that one's hip. I like his roundness of body. I like his proportions and the way things fit together on him. If I'm going to critique him any at all, I think he's still sound enough and correct enough. I change his hind leg posture ever so slightly just to make it that much neater to look at as he goes. But boy, a nice sheep that's just got a lot of good going from him from a market lamb standpoint. One we run here next in second, probably as dynamic in his hip and pins and where they set in relation to the rest of his body as anything. Really handles well right there over his backside as well. Just runs into a really nice sheep ahead of him. He doesn't have that same kind of length. He's maybe just a little plainer there in his base of his chest floor, but still a good kind of sheep. Sheep we run here next in third, again, just a solid sheep here. Got muscle, got enough width to him probably relative to those two. I like to change him out of his hip and his pin, pick him up in his front end just a shade. Another one we can kind of say the same thing on here in fourth. Again, boldness of body's good, rack shape's good. Want to change that sheep there in his lower leg, and then more so for me, he gets just a little thicker, more mature up front in his head and neck. I like to make him a little more youthful, neater to look at there. Next one that comes out, monster hip, and's got plenty of shape to him. A little staler right there over his loin. I like to set him down in the plane of his back just a little better, make him a little better to look at there. We got one here that propped up from the side, gives you a nice level look, and he's fresh, probably as good as anything out here. Gets a little base narrow though, off either end as you study him. Like to open him up. The big blue sheep here, a lot of elevation, runs uphill the right way. It's got some neatness and touches pretty lean and trim in this class. Just needs quite a bit more hip and width when you get in behind him. A pair of them here that compositionally start to get in a little trouble for me. I like to lean them up a little bit. They've got plenty of bone, plenty of foot, plenty of substance. Just want to lean them and make them just a little more athletic in the way they look and the way they touch versus their classmates here. But again, very, very solid class of sheep.
First place went to Addison Fulmar, Artesia FFA. Second went to Bryce Bain, Artesia FFA. Third went to Mason McCullough, Loving 4-H. Fourth went to McKenna Cox, Brush Popper 4-H. Fifth went to Mason McCullough, Loving 4-H. Sixth went to Clay Kincaid, Pennyasco 4-H. Seventh went to Madison Mancha, Cottonwood 4-H. Eighth went to Bailey Dennison, Cottonwood 4-H. And ninth went to Dylan Goldston, Artesia FFA. Please bring your Class 7 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Class 7 black faces to the north end of the show ring.
Really a neat division here as well, and as we bring them back out here, I don't apologize for it, but this is probably not as consistent of a look all the way through from class to class, but I just think these are three of the better ones here in terms of just the way they're put together, the way they're designed, and again, what they're good at, they're extremely good at. But I'll break them down just a little bit because I think it warrants a little justification amongst this crew being so good. The one that came out of our first class, if you will, he's probably the tricked out one of the crew. Just that dynamic in his pins, that opened up in his body, that massive in terms of his shape, and still able to keep a relative level of comfort to his skeleton and set him down in a pretty organized manner is just what you want to do with him up front in terms of his shoulder. Again, I like to not only bring it into him a little bit, but just rotate him in his knee and his shoulder a little differently to really get him and to get out and go and reach, but from his shoulder back. And really his neck set's still pretty good. That's an interesting sheep to get to study. Just is he practical enough in all the places of structure you want him to be and useful enough there, because boy, there's not one like him in terms of just pin width, stoutness, and substance. The one that came out of that next class, if you will, that's the pretty one of the crew. That one you love to look at. You like his design. You like his length. He's definitely the loose, flexible, limber one out here that, you know, how he's standing there propped up, you like him probably even better when he's on the move out there going. I think that's a testament to his structure and the way he's built and designed. He's got enough muscle probably for most, and still probably has enough for me, or I wouldn't have used him to win that class. As you break him down amongst these three, you'd like to see him just a little flatter, square, wider, right there over his loin edge for me personally. I'd open him up still just a touch more there in terms of just sheer chest width, but again, a nice sheep. I think that you really gotta like and really grabbed you just from that profile, that look, the balance he has. And the sheep that came out of that third class, again, got a lot of power to him, a lot of width and a lot of substance to that guy. He's probably at that size and weight amongst this group as fresh in his rib cage and bold in his body as any of them out here, and still just as big out of his hip. I still think he handles himself quite well in terms of his structure. He's maybe not as neat in his hind leg and foot set as the one right there in class 2, but at the same time he's got more to him than that sheep. He may not be as dynamic maybe in some of his features that one out of class 1, but he probably keeps it more practical in terms of his structure. So the longer I look at him, the more I study him. To me, that's the combo sheep out here. Going to use him to be the champion in this division. Going to come back with class 2 to be reserved.
Your champion Division II blackface went to Addison Fulmar, and your reserve Division II blackface went to Creed Hughes. Please bring your Class 8 blackfaces to the north end of the show ring. Class 8 blackfaces to the north end of the show ring. Please bring your Class 8 blackfaces to the north end of the show ring. Class 8 blackfaces to the north end of the show ring.
Really good class. And then again, I'd say really congratulations to the whole class. It's a really a deep one, but yet a good one in terms of quality. And it's one of those classes where I hope you're disappointed if you're not up here in the top spot, because you still got a good sheet. That's how good the class is. And then as good as this class is, for me personally, I didn't have any question about which one I was using. That one that leads off this class, I think, does so pretty quickly. That's a powerful animal. That's still a show animal. I like that one's feet and legs. I like that one's structure. I like that one's look. Way that one's chest sets into his body, but yet the way he explodes in terms of just dimension and shape all the way through there is pretty awesome on that sheep. I think the only thing you pick on him, and I don't think it affects his levelness or his balance, I'd extend his hip that much further, make him that much longer hip to really get really dangerous with one that you couldn't pick a big hole in. But he's a man here today within this class, and I'm going to use him here to win it. So a good sheep. Sheep we run here in second. I like a lot of things about this one, and in fact, out of his hip and dock, that may be the one advantage he has over that one that leads out ahead of him. But boy, he still touches well there over his rack. He's still just as smooth. I probably like his size, elevation, and just the way he puts things together just a notch better than those two we leave behind him. But boy, a nice sheep that don't have just a whole lot wrong with him, just not as dynamic as that one that leads off that wins the class. These next two that come, it's hard to separate them. They look alike, they're built alike, they've got the same advantages, and once you really get to looking at him, there's just enough of an advantage in thinness in terms of just leanness right behind this one's shoulder. The way he runs uphill just a little better. You know, if that sheep's just a shade longer body or a little bigger stature, he probably moves up and gives that front one a really battle here, because that kind of muscle, that kind of width still keeps it, I think, collected enough in terms of his athleticism. That's a good sheep as well. They first came in, this one was on the tail end of the group, and I thought, boy, we got another one that's gonna fight for the top spot. And the longer you look at him, again, his quality's still there. He's just a little more conventionally built and a little smaller, gets a little base wide up front, starts to look just a little more mature than he needs to for that size. I like to maybe make him bigger in his size, a little less conventional in his makeup, but for that size, how he's built, how he's constructed, his proportions are good. And again, that's a good sheep in this class. These next two are my problem sheep, because I like a lot of things about him. They're just not quite there yet. I love this one's hip. I love his natural shape of his body. He's probably as fresh handling as any of them out here. And boy, he's got the right look up front. He gets a little high twisted. He gets a little weaker in his spine, throws off his balance just enough in a tough class like this. It allows you to pick on him a little bit, but that's still a very good sheep. Probably another one again. She does an awesome job getting this one propped up and getting the most out of him. He is awesome in his hip and in just his leg dimension, the way he parks that onto his body. I just wish he had that same kind of dynamic pieces from there forward. He's big back, but maybe it's not all as smooth and collected. He wants to get just a little weird there at his knee and the way he comes into his shoulder. She does, again, a good job trying to keep that shown out of him. I wish he was a little square up front, pieced everything together, just a little more balanced fashion, but still a quality sheep in this class. You get your hands on this one that comes next and you're extremely impressed. How big back he is, how square and how fresh he handles there. You get to the side of him or watch him move, and that's where he maybe doesn't fit that group in terms of just an elite look. Wants to run downhill just a little bit, park a little wide there up front. Another nice one here that's big-legged, just handles a little staler over his loin and starting to get a little hide there to him. Big hip one here that's got enough dimension to him, just gets a little shorter here, needs to be just a little leaner for me personally. Freshen him up a bit. Same thing can be said for these two we end up closing the class with. They're good sheep, because this is a good sheep class here. Just maybe run out of quality, run out of stoutness relative to those ones ahead of them. So outstanding class, really intriguing top 4, 5, or 6 there up front.
First place went to Aspen Hughes Country Clovers. Second went to Creed Hughes Country Clovers. Third went to Bailey Dennising Cottonwood 4-H. Fourth went to Kaylee Shockey Cottonwood 4-H. Fifth went to Brooklyn Fuentes Cottonwood 4-H. Sixth went to Gracie Rand Artesia FFA. Seventh went to McKenna Cox Brush Poppers 4-H. Eighth went to Aiden Cox Brush Poppers 4-H. Ninth went to Aubrey Putman Country Clovers. 10th went to Trevor Pope Country Clovers, and 11th went to Dakota Goldstick Cottonwood 4-H. Please bring your Class 9 Please bring your Class 9 black faces to the north end of the show ring. Class 9 black faces to the north end of the show ring. We will also not be taking a break. We're going to go ahead and just keep the shows going.
Another neat class here, and I guess, again, I think this comes down to a pair. You can just pick what you like. I think you pick your kind, and I'm trying to keep them, again, as basic and opened up and round-bodied as possible, and that's what this one does. He's just a fundamentally correct wether that gets a whole lot, again, things right in terms of body shape, dimension, the right kind of hip and leg. He's better in his twist than what this sheep is behind him. He's better in his hind leg position than what the sheep is behind him. He's not as unique from about the middle part of his body forward as what that sheep is, but again, I think from there back, just too much good for me personally to get around this class. I tuck him into his shoulder, freshen him up just a shade up front, but a good kind of a sheep. That's what made it hard with this one here in second, because for me, you go from about his loin forward, there might not have been a sheep we've seen so far today that's got that kind of elevation, that kind of rack shape, and that kind of loin in him. It's just from there back, though, a little flatter legged, a little higher twisted. I like to modify his hock angle just a shade when you get him on the move, just to make him plant and go just a little more coordinated. But boy, that's still a neat sheep that's got a lot of neat things going for him. When they first walked in, I thought this kind of speckle-hided one here that come in third, I thought, boy, them two there in the back, him and that class one, are going to link up quite well. And in a lot of ways they do. I still like his structure, I still like his build. Compositionally, though, he's starting to push the envelope amongst these three. A little softer, not as shapely, and maybe just not as fresh handling all the way through as what those two are. That's still a very, very good sheep from a skeletal standpoint. Just wish he was a little fresher, a little more youthful looking here today. One that comes here next, again, probably the opposite of that. I love the shape to his back and his top. Really good in terms of just the contour and roundness of his body. His elevation's very, very good. A little high twisted, a little awkward in his hock, but main thing when we get him on the side, a little deeper in his chest relative to his flank, kind of throws his balance off there as you get off and study him, but it's still a nice kind of a sheep. Thick-ended sheep that's got a big hip, and he's heavy structured and big featured here, just a little short and compact. I like to stretch him out, make him a little bigger in his kind. The one that comes next probably fixes those problems. He is a little more elevated. I like him out of his hip. He needs to handle a little fresher and wider right there over his top, particularly over his loin. I like to see him send that into his hip quite a bit square. Probably one, again, that touches good in terms of the way we got him handling is this one that comes next. His freshness is good, his leanness is good, his squareness of hip is good. Just needs more width, though, to go along with that, more shape up top. He, too, I like to just see him a little differently there from hock to ground in terms of the way he moves. A big, long-sided sheep here that grabs really big in his loin. He just becomes one of the narrow ones when you get right here in his hip and his lower base. I like to open him up. Then a sheep here that's probably his productive centered in terms of his body shape. He's heavy boned and big-footed, a little short and compact, starting to push the envelope in condition. I like to see just a little more muscle with that guy there as well. So again, a really good class there. Nice trio there up top.
First place went to Addison Fulmar, Artesia FFA. Second went to Braden Fuentes, Artesia FFA. Third went to Swayze Fulmar, Cottonwood 4-H. Fourth went to Braden Fuentes, Artesia FFA, tag 775. Fifth went to Morgan Phillips, Country Clovers. Sixth went to Reagan Van Soos, Country Clovers. Seventh went to John King, Country Clovers. Eighth went to Aiden Cox, Brush Poppers 4-H. Ninth went to Peyton Putman, Country Clovers. Please bring your Class 7 and Class 8 first and second places to the north end of the show ring. Your Class 7 and Class 8 first place and second places.
Another good class. And again, as we start to push these things and these heavier weights and get them, it's hard to keep them put together. It's hard to keep their chest in them and then keep their design right. And to me, that's why I go with the one that I do in this class. He's still a muscular one. He's probably as fresh and good and bold and natural in terms of his rib cage as anything in here. But I think where he gets the elevation for me over these next two, he's so much more youthful there in his head, neck, and chest and the way it sets in him. And then when they're walking here on the move, he keeps himself the most collected and the neatest there to look at as well, on top of being a very muscular sheep that's got some trimness and some neatness about him. These next two, again, struggle to find the words to be appropriate on them, but they're good fat sheep in terms of just market lambs, but they're starting to lose some of that show ring look and presence, starting to get just a little more chest in them, maybe not as dynamic in their shape of muscle. Now, with that said, this one here in second, he is monster backed. I mean, it handles big, it handles wide. He's very, very smooth. I like to tuck him into his chest a little differently. I like to give him a little more shape like from off his hind leg like some of the other ones she's walked in here. But again, a nice sheep that's got some balance to him, some proportion to just not quite all there. This one here in third, big sheep that's got big legs. He's got monster feet there as well. You just got to make the calls. There's enough just true shape to that. We've done a master job feeding that thing because to me, his pieces don't look like one that's always been the most muscular, but boy, you've done a nice job getting the back into that one and the hip into that one. Just needs more shape and expression down low. I like to give more forearm and more chest for me personally, but still a nice kind of a sheep that does a lot of things very, very well. Sheep we run here next in fourth, he's probably the different one of this crew. That one is dynamic out of his hip. He is awesome in terms of his shape of his leg, but he's almost raw in this class. A little flatter body, a little tucked there into his heart and his forerib relative to his classmates. And then when we get him on the go, he maybe wants to come loose in his shoulder, maybe not keep himself as collected. We got a pair of them that's still good. A lot of classes, we had more in here. I think these two would still stack up in the top end of our class. Just here today, they're just a little over the hill in terms of condition. I like to lean them up and freshen them up just a shade here, but really an outstanding class here.
First place went to Clansley Conkling, Cottonwood 4-H. Second went to Addison Fulmar, Artesia FFA. Third went to Kaylin Klein, Artesia FFA. Fourth went to Brooklyn Fuentes, Cottonwood 4-H. Fifth went to Bailey Dennison, Cottonwood 4-H. And sixth went to Stella Rand, Cottonwood 4-H. We need all your division, blackface, champion, and reserves to the north end of the show ring, and your speckle reserves and champions, your Dorper reserves and champions, and your cross finals to the north end of the show ring.
Another nice setup here in this last division we have here. That first and second, that first class, again, that was a tough class, and as tough as that class was, I still was pretty fond of this one that leads off that class, and I still am. He's a hard one to build and make, to put the chest in him like he does and keep himself as youthful as he looks. But then, boy, he is the right body style in terms of roundness of body without a lot of extra waist down there. I love the shape to his rack. I like the hip and loin he has in him. And again, structurally, he's very athletic. He can get around and go. He's not perfect. You lengthen out his hip that much further, and you like him that much better. But still a nice kind of a sheep, and a good one there right behind him in second. It probably does correct that hip deal that we're talking about, but maybe just not as overwhelming in terms of his shape up top. The pair that came out of this next class, again, they're very, very opposite in what they do, but this one was just a little more my style in terms of just his body shape, his stoutness. He's got some structure about him as well. Again, he can be a shot planer at times up front as you get to studying him, but it's still a very, very good kind of a sheep. And the sheep that came out of that last class, that pair of them there, again, this one just kind of grows on you. His length is good. I think his trimness in terms of just carcass attributes is very, very good. I think he's fairly spot on in terms of how we fed him there as well. And he's plenty enough when you get him behind him. If you want to directly compare him to some of these others, is he just wide and square right there over his loin and what they are? No. But at the same time, at his weight and size, he actually keeps himself as youthful and neat to look at as anything out here. And so really a good set of them here. I'm not a very good poker player. I like this one here out of his first class quite well. He'll be our champion in this division. Again, we bring this second in, and again, he starts to combine some things you like, just as his quality, his hip posture, his freshness. I like him well enough up front in terms of his chest and usefulness up front, better than another one out here. I probably like his just sheer squareness right there over his hip and loin better than another one. So we're going to keep that pair together. This one right here, this class is going to be reserved.
Your Division III Blackface champion went to Aspen Hughes, and your reserve went to Creed Hughes.
really a good set of sheep. Sheep show's been fun, very, very competitive. Again, try to get through them in an efficient way, but yet you can get slowed down a time or two when those classes are as good as some of them have been here. So I'll be brief here. That one that won that first breed division, again, like that one, Skeleton. That was a good way to start to get comfortable with finding those ones that you really like at the ground and like the way they're built there. Still wanted handled with enough hip and muscle. Maybe out here you'd like to power them up just a shade. Those Dorpers here that came out of that next division, again, this one on the move. Boy, he really handles himself very, very well in terms of his hip and hind leg posture. Both those sheep probably are starting to push just a little more on them there as well, but still good kind of sheep here. Ones that came out next, I guess our spec division here, again, two of them that were pretty neat in terms of just their dynamics and the way they put things together. This one started to get a little closer to making himself look like a market lamb here with his extra shape. I still like his structure. He's probably as limber and good moving and good in terms of hind leg range of motion as anything out here really amongst this group, and one that's just got a lot of quality to him there. A neat one there that was his partner there in breed, just again a little more time down the road, and that one gets to be pretty cool himself. D1, again, they set the bar high, and it was high, and they did a good job of getting there and encompassing a lot of things that I was wanting to try to put together in some of these sheep as far as muscle and look here. You get back out here, again, you ask yourself, they look mature enough to win, maybe not, but at the same time, they're D1, and they don't have to look that way, but that's still a quality pair of sheep within that division that do a lot of things well. Division 2, again, another tough division with some interesting choices and decisions, but the more you started to look at this one, the more things just made sense. Things just put together, a lot of things the right way, incredibly fresh. When you get the hands on him in terms of his top, the roundness of his body, I like his hip and the way he sits there, and still good enough as you study him there up front again, but just a really, really solid type of a sheep. You can get to picking him at him and comparing him maybe to some and say maybe he could use just a shade more forearm or sheer foot to him, but he still uses things very, very correctly, comes together well. And again, the good looking one of that trio within that division there just needed a little more to him for my personal liking, but still a quality sheep. Then a pair that came out of class together and ended up representing this heavy division together. Still a very, very nice pair of sheep that do a lot of good things very, very right. Again, just kind of one that puts some different things together, that starts to take some next level pieces and get them together. And I'll be the first to admit he still ain't perfect. There's a place or two that you'll have to make the calls that acceptable enough for you, and for me it particularly was, because I think all the other things he assembles makes him probably the hardest to make, the hardest to build, and hardest to just sit out here and put a lot of good things together. So really a very, very nice setup. Let's give all of our sheep exhibitors here this morning a very nice round of applause.
Your grand champion market lamb went to Aspen Hughes, and your reserve grand champion market lamb went to Addison Fulmar. Please let's give this judge one more big round of applause for coming out to Eddy County today.